From Topps comes the all-new digital card collecting app, free to download from iTunes or Google Play. Star Wars Card Trader.
For the first time ever, collect and trade everything from legendary 1977 Star Wars cards to new cards featuring exclusive content from Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
All from the comfort of your mobile devices. Star Wars Card Trader.
These are the cards you're looking for.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z and Corey Clubb, the podcast you're looking for. This is. Yes.
For an entire generation, people have experienced Star Wars the only way it's been possible, on the TV screen. But if you've only seen it this way, you haven't seen it at all.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
We've been waiting for you.
The Force is strong here, even stronger than the coffee.
Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi. Here are your hosts, Dan Z and Corey Clubb.
Hi, this is Dennis Keithley, Star Wars comic reviewer for Retro Zap, and the winner of Coffee with Kenobi's first Patreon coffee chat. And you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z and Corey Clubb. This is the podcast you're looking for.
On this special coffee chat, we welcome Dennis Keithley, great Star Wars fan, a reviewer of Marvel Star Wars comics for Retro Zap, and a great friend of Coffee with Kenobi. Dennis was previously on Rebels Reactions with us when we looked at Season 1 Idiot's Array and is the first winner of our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon coffee chat. We are happy to have another cup of coffee with Dennis. Welcome back, Dennis.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
Thank you. And the way this worked out was through the Patreon Coffee with Kenobi thing that we were running, and everyone has been so gracious and generous. It's gotten a lot of buzz, and we really appreciate that. Dennis's name was drawn, and he is the winner of our first coffee chat. And essentially, for our listeners, what that entails is that this is Dennis's show. He can come up with the questions. He can have us come up with the questions. He can pick the topic. We're just happy to share a cup of coffee with him, and take it away, my friend.
All right, thank you. I've been inspired by your all's 5 questions that you ask at the end of your episodes about favorite movies, favorite characters, themes, and the like. But the one thing I'd always wanted to talk to you guys about was how you first became Star Wars fans, and also in that vein, as the prequel trilogy has been released and the upcoming trilogy is on the horizon, what your anticipation has been like for these movies. So let's start there. And I guess we'll start with Corey. When did you first see the Star Wars movies, and what was your initial reaction?
You know, it seems that I always try to reach back as far as I can remember the earliest memory, and the one that keeps coming back to me is watching the movies at my cousin's house on VHS. It's kind of that whine behind it and that, taped version. So it was really kind of not as clear as, you might have seen it previously, and obviously in the films and the theaters and stuff. But I also remember playing with his toys. He had a large collection of the Kenner figures. He had the Millennium Falcon, which was excellent. And, it's just like I was just so engrossed into the world right away because obviously the story was really good. I enjoyed the characters so much, and I was just a very imaginative young kid. Now, this is maybe the early 80s or so that's where I'm coming from as far as how I became a Star Wars fan. But it kind of grew in high school because I kind of got into comic books and kind of leaped into that world as well. So I was kind of picking up some comics here and there, once in a while, reading some of the novelizations, things like that. And it wasn't until maybe 7th or 8th grade I kind of got into heavier fandom as far as just my own likes and dislikes, and really got into knowing the knowledge of the films and the characters and everything. I wanted to know more. That appetite was there, so I was feeding it and whatnot. And it was also it kind of grew into that and into high school as well. And I just kind of every so often you have somebody pop up and say, "Oh, it's Star Wars" or something like that, and I'd catch my attention right away. And there was this teacher I had for social studies in high school, and she had a Star Wars poster. And right away, I had to make friends with this teacher, and it was really cool because they could connect in that way. So for me being a Star Wars fan and growing up with that, and of course the introduction into the internet was coming up and coming as well. I just fed into that. I never got into the hyperspace spaces or anything like that. But I had my own little kind of core fandom, I guess if you want to call it that.
What poster was that? Do you remember what was on it?
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It was the one where Luke's holding the lightsaber up, and he's got Leia down the corner, and then Han's off the side.
So the classic.
It's the classic, but it's like it's just shrunk down a little bit. He's kind of it's semi-centered, semi-off-centered, and it's got the X-wings coming around the side.
Sure.
That's not the original one, though, is it?
Well, there's two versions of it.
Mm-hmm. One of the original ones isn't. Was a Luke and Leia, and they're kind of like pop icons looking.
Yes,
look a little popish.
And Dennis, maybe you know the name of the artist off the top of your head.
Well, I've got that poster actually hanging above my desk.
Well, this helps.
And I don't see his. Oh, there it is. The initials appear to be TJ, but I can't read the signature. Unfortunately,
if I had my Star Wars poster book in front of me, I would know. I'm sure our friends can look it up for us. But yeah, that's cool. That image is amazing for me. And I know I've told this story before, but it's just something that makes me so happy. And with this whole new thing that Target is doing, this initiative to have this time capsule of Star Wars fandom, it's kind of a timely thing that you've got here, Dennis. But I remember seeing it on TV, seeing commercials for it in probably 77 or 78, and just thinking it was really, really cool. I was born in 72, so when Star Wars came out, I was 5 years old, 6 years old, and we weren't allowed to see PG films, but my family had talked with my cousin who lived up north. We lived in New Orleans at the time, as I mentioned, and she had seen it, and they asked her if it was safe for kids to see. And she gave the green light and said that there was some shooting, but there was no blood, and it was really fun and really exciting, and the special effects were amazing, and that we would love it. So we went multiple times to see it, and every time we went, I think we went probably 4 or 5 times to see it, and every single time it was sold out. And that was very discouraging. I remember being really, really bummed, but I also think that's kind of why I am the way I am about spoilers, now that I think about it and reflect on this, because it just kept building anticipation, and every time I knew I was going, I was more and more excited for it. While this was going on, we would be out at the mall, and we'd be at Penny's or somewhere. And I remember seeing the box for the early bird Star Wars action figure special. And I remember my dad saying, "You don't need to get that because there's no figures. You got to wait for them to be mailed to you." And I remember thinking, okay, whatever. I don't know if I was as eloquent when I was 6 years old. And then, so we didn't get that. But we went back later when the figures came out. And I got C-3PO first. And I had this figure of C-3PO. So I was a collector before I ever saw the movie, guys. And that was interesting. And based on that alone, knowing that the Kenner figures came out in 78, that had to be the year that I saw A New Hope. And so the first time I saw it, we went through a drive-in. I didn't know it was a drive-in. Our parents told us we were going to run errands and that Dad had to do something. And he pulled up to this little window, and he rolled down the window, and he said, "Okay, 4 for Star Wars." And my brother and I looked at each other, and I still remember that moment so perfectly. So the first time I saw Star Wars was at a drive-in, with the stars up above. And I remember just watching it and being completely riveted. I remember announcing to my brother, "I'm going to collect everything Star Wars. I'm going to collect everything Star Wars." And he's 2.5 years younger than me, and who knows what he said at that time. But it just really took off from there. And I know a lot of people say they've been fans all their lives, and I pretty much have. My earliest memories are that.
Well, yeah, my experience is actually fairly similar to yours. I turned 3 right after that movie came out, and I can't remember my first viewing. All I know is that my dad took me to see it as my first movie ever, and I apparently fell asleep in the dark theater at some point. My first memory of actually seeing it anywhere is at a drive-in theater. And I have 2 younger brothers, and we all got in our pajamas and hopped in the back seat of my parents' car and drove there and watched the movie. My first figure was also C-3PO.
Oh,
and
cool.
R2D, yeah, and R2D2. There was a neighbor kid who was a couple years older than myself, and he always came down the block and had I think he had Luke and C-3PO and maybe R2D2. And I think that's my first experience remembering being envious of anything, because I really coveted those action figures. And I remember the trip to a Kmart when we got our first set. But so that's my experience. So Corey, did you not get to see any of the movies when they were originally released in the theater?
No, I've never seen them originally when they were released. I remember seeing them when they re-released
97?
the special edition for them. Yeah, and I remember, like you said, the anticipation does build because knowing what they were, then releasing to the theaters was a big deal in '97 because, people who had missed out in that first era of seeing them originally could go and do that and build their own memories. And I remember just a few years ago or so, I went and saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in theaters with my kids because they had re-release on the IMAX screen, and I'd never seen it on the big screen. I thought I got to go to take my kids to this and have that like you said, you guys made it perfect. You went as a family and you went, and it was like an event. It was something to cancel your plans over, and it was the thing you're going to do that weekend or that day, and the anticipation just builds and builds, and I think that's we get caught talking tonight is more of this anticipation is again building for us as Star Wars moves ahead.
So, and I guess this is probably different for both of you, and we'll start with Dan on this. Having seen the first Star Wars, do you remember what it was like with the anticipation when The Empire Strikes Back was on the horizon?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because obviously if social media and the internet existed back then, which makes me sound like I'm 1,000. But, I said to my students the other day, I was talking about something that had happened before. I talked about VHS tapes, and I said, that makes me sound like I'm 100, but I'm actually only 95. And they just are getting to know me, so they just kind of look at me like, what is this guy doing?
This guy, yeah.
Yeah, but I had the novel for The Empire Strikes Back, and I read Through the Battle of Hoth. And I just didn't really know what spoilers were. I was just reading this book because I thought, there's the new Star Wars thing. I better look at it and read it. Not even picturing in my mind that I could go see it in the theater. And then my mom came out on our back porch and said, hey, that book you're reading, you want to go see the movie now? And I was like, I can go see it? So we went to the theater, and I was just completely enraptured. And I closed my eyes and tensed up and freaked out when Han Solo cut open the Tauntaun's belly, or when the Mynock jumped down, and I screamed and I was scared. And it was just incredible. I actually can't remember hype until Return of the Jedi came out. And that was pretty cool marketing-wise because while I had Star Wars on Betamax, that's right, Betamax, folks, we would, every year or every 6 months, Star Wars would be re-released or Empire would be re-released in theaters. And we were always a little more excited towards 82 or so to see Empire again and again because we'd seen Star Wars so many times, both in theaters and at home. But this particular time when they were showing A New Hope, they were going to show trailers, a sneak trailer for Return of the Jedi. So we went and we saw that, and I remember some images kind of going through my mind. I remember seeing Lando fighting, who I thought was a Tusken Raider at the time, but it wasn't. It was a skiff guard. And just being so excited for that. And then knowing that Return of the Jedi was coming out, my mom had said, hey, we're going to get you out of school today, and we're going to go see Return of the Jedi the first day it comes out. And that, my friends, was hype because while we were waiting in line, we were there the first day it came out. We saw the second showing because the first one was sold out. While we were waiting because the first one was sold out, I went across the street to the mall and I bought out Return of the Jedi official magazine of the movie. So I was thumbing through that. We also had I had the Luke Skywalker and Bib Fortuna and Gamorrean Guard figures from Kenner because we went to the toy store every week and would get new figures because Hasbro released them early before the Return of the Jedi came out. So to me, the real hype hit me when Jedi came out. But that was also when I was like 11, 10 years old. So it's easier to remember that. Plus, there was more going on.
Yeah, I would say back in, 1980, when the hype was picking up for Empire Strikes Back, I was in kindergarten. But I do remember bringing the, talk about outdated, the newspaper section that had all the, you had to get some sort of a version of the poster in the newspaper, and it'd have all the local theaters and times they were showing the movie. And I remember cutting that out and taking it to show and tell, but knowing next to nothing going into that movie. But just remembering, I anticipated it. I was anticipating it big time and super excited to go. And I have to confess, I didn't make it through my entire first viewing of The Empire Strikes Back. By the time they got to Cloud City and Darth Vader was lunging at Luke out of the shadows, I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to bail and catch it again on a second showing.
Isn't that cool, though? Because it shows how intense it was.
Yeah, that was. But what I did do was I picked up the theater that we went to had some of the Marvel comics that they were releasing with the movies. I didn't get to go right away for Empire Strikes Back, and I picked up the comic that covered the Battle of Hoth with the AT-ATs. Mm-hmm. And I read that thing cover to cover to cover. And it dawned on me not too long ago, that's why, before the movie was really readily available on VHS or cable or anything else, why I seem to remember that scene so vividly. And I just picked up the hardback version of they collected all those comics and put them into a single hardback. And I was reading through that the other day, and it was very nostalgic. Had all those, they recolored it so it didn't look quite the same, but that was kind of a cool experience. So Corey, did you watch the movies just back to back to back, or how did you get to experience them?
It's funny because I try to reach back to those memories, and I remember watching more of The Return of the Jedi, and I wonder if that's because that was more the relevant one when I was watching at my cousin's house. If that was just, they were showing that more on the TV, and that would get him the chance to record it. But I don't know if we watched them back. I'm assuming we did, just because that's usually how my dad would show us stuff. He would just either rent the movies or, like I said, record it off TV. And I can't remember watching, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi in succession as far as that much. But I remember the story flowing that way as a kid, so I kind of had a new context. So I'm assuming that's the way I'd watched it. I don't know why this mixes up for me so much, but it's one of those things when you're a kid, you have so much going on, and everything is such larger than life for you. It's hard to reach back, and you guys have better memories than I do, I guess, maybe.
No, that's fun. I can imagine. It's been a while. Like I said, I can vaguely remember seeing these movies, the first time or two. It wasn't until later. And I guess, like Dan, when I remember first being exposed to hype, it was Return of the Jedi. And this is what really struck me when I was thinking about this. Did you all in your school experience get those Scholastic book orders?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That I can remember, I think, being the first way I really started finding out things about Return of the Jedi. And I ordered they used to have some sort of a photo book for the movie, and you essentially got the entire movie, and they cut out select screens from the thing. And, anticipating that, I remember when the title was Revenge of the Jedi, and, seeing some of the characters up on the pegs at the local Target and Toys R Us and things like that, and having no idea what they were or who these people were supposed to be or what their role was in the movie. That whole thought of Lando fighting a Tusken Raider, I thought when I first saw a picture of the Emperor that was Luke Skywalker and they'd done something horrible to him. And so I was greatly relieved to find out otherwise.
And that reminds me too of those in Scholastic. They had the official storybook of the movie, mm-hmm. and they had it for all three of the originals. At the beginning, it would have little pictures of each of the main characters and a 1 or 2 sentence description of each of them. And that was how I got a lot of my information about who some of these characters were. I believe it said Bib Fortuna was Jabba the Hutt's Major Domo, and I was really confused about what that meant. Mm-hmm. They also had one for Raiders of the Lost Ark, by the way, and they called Belloc Indiana Jones's rival. And I remember asking my parents over and over again, what's a rival? What's a rival? It just reminds me when you talk about Scholastic and those great things that they had to offer to help encourage people to learn more about these films.
Yeah, that they did. So I guess the next experience, I'm going to skip past things like the Ewok movies and Caravan of Courage and the like. I remember seeing those on HBO, but not a whole lot of details. When the movies finally returned as special editions in the late 90s, what was that like for you all? With the anticipation, the new special effects that they're promoting and the additional scenes that were being added.
For me, again, seeing it on the big screen, I didn't have the commercial breaks, sometimes you would skip the commercial breaks or the ending of a bit of one or something like that. But I remember distinctly there was a dollar theater in our area that would replay newer-ish movies for like $1.
Where was it? In Peoria?
It was in Westlake, in Peoria, yeah. And so we'd go there and just watch whatever, we didn't see on the big screen that was maybe a month or two old, And they had movie posters out of the newer movies that were due to come out. And I remember seeing the special edition poster, and then that was kind of how I realized, it's coming back to theaters. And I got excited. I was like, this is really cool because, like I said, I could have that experience again. And then going and seeing it in theaters, like I said, it was just that you just revert to this childlike place, and you just kind of fall back in love with it all over again, just because it's so well done. But then, like you mentioned, the added scenes and such, it was a little off-settling to me because you get used to what you know, you get used to what you love. And the new scenes were exciting because it was a little touch of, hey, here's something you didn't see, or here's something we wanted to put in the original film, but we couldn't because of lack of, design or lack of budget or whatnot. So it was a nice little key into what George was kind of thinking and what he wanted to do. But then again, it did kind of tear away from what I thought Star Wars was. It's almost like that behind the scenes.
Really?
Think. Yeah, I think
even back then you already had a discerning Coffee with Kenobi mind.
Maybe so. I think I might have been too young for coffee then, but I think I still see things today like behind the scenes or a different take on a scene from a newer movie, and I think, I didn't like that as good as the original take or the one they kept in the film, just because I've fallen in love with that version of it, and I think that's what most people kind of argue back and forth with is, that original memory they have. And if somebody's there to change it up or, make something new out of it, it warps our perception a little bit. I know a lot of people have problems with that with the prequels. They have that mindset of, it's our memories, don't mess with them type thing. And I can get that, but I think, with these re-releases, I think he was trying to not only give us some new things to see, but also reinvigorate the saga itself for new audiences.
In '97, that was when I was about to get my first bachelor's, and I remember sitting in an English seminar class, and I wanted to, because I knew that the special editions were coming out. I'd been collecting the Power of the Force figures, the muscular Star Wars figures, ever since they came out. And I knew that they were coming out again in theaters, and I was thrilled. The way I found out about that, though, is pretty cool because I was going to see Space Jam, right? and I love Michael Jordan.
Because MJ, yeah.
Exactly. I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. I love the Bulls.
And Bill Murray.
Yeah, that's right. There's actually some pretty cool lines in Space Jam. But before Space Jam started, they showed the trailer for the special edition, and I didn't know when it was coming. And even telling you now, I have goosebumps. Whenever I say that, I say it on the show all the time, but it really is true. I just get this excited nostalgia. And I looked at, oh my gosh, I looked at my brother and my friends. Star Wars is coming back to the big screen. And God bless Michael Jordan, Bugs Bunny, but I was so distracted for the first 20 minutes because I knew Star Wars was coming back. So we're in senior seminar, and I wanted to write a paper how I could analyze Star Wars. How ironic, right? And my professor had never seen any of the films. And he said, but if you get me a VCR and copies of these movies and bring them to my house and set it up, I'll watch them and you can do the paper. So I didn't do that. That just seemed like a lot of work. I think I did it on Chris Van Allsburg and Mark Twain, and that was fine too. It worked out. Got the degree. But I was super pumped, and I was just super ready to just pour into Star Wars again from an adult perspective. I was in my early 20s. And so we went to the theater, and we went early, and I remember having the Chewbacca action figure in my pocket, sort of as a goof, and my friends and I laughed and joked about it. But to me, it was sort of like holding on to that nostalgia that was the little boy inside of me. So we got into the theater, and we were walking, and it was sold out. It was packed. And I remember seeing people dressed in Stormtrooper armor. And this was, of course, if you know your 501st history, this is when the 501st was just getting started. This was like the burgeoning effort that is the 501st. And I remember thinking it was a little weird, and I was a little off-put by it, but I also thought it was amazing. And I thought, man, I would love to have that armor. So we walked in, and we were walking by the concession stand, and people were cheering and clapping. And I remember this girl selling popcorn. I remember her saying, rather loudly and rather frustratedly, "It's just a movie." And I thought, you just don't get it. This is a culture here. This is something different. And I was absolutely thrilled. I actually saw the special edition of Star Wars 3 times in the theater because I was just so excited to see it back again. So, as with all things, I ate it up. Hey, it's Dan Z.
And Corey Clubb.
From Coffee with Kenobi. And we are excited to let you know about the Star Wars Card Trader app from Topps.
Yeah, Dan, you remember those cards that came out in 1977, the good old days? Well, they're back again. Yeah, so it's the Star Wars Card Trader app. It has them all, as well as fantastic images from The Force Awakens, The Clone Wars, Rebels, and much more.
Absolutely. You've got your favorite characters, memorable scenes, you've got key moments. It's all there. You get credits every day for free from the app, which is available from iTunes or Google Play. Open packs from the cantina, trade with your friends, and enjoy these amazing Star Wars memories as you take your first step into a larger world.
There's so many different sets to choose from also, and there's so many great cards to chase. There's special inserts, there's rewards for completing sets and variants. It's everything you love in collecting from a galaxy far, far away.
The Star Wars Digital Card Trader collecting app from Topps.
These are the cards you're looking for.
So that when you saw the preview, was that the one where they had the television set and they said, for over a generation, this is something to the effect of, this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
which inspires the opening of all of our shows.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah, I love that. I remember I was in '96. I was still in college, and I first caught wind. I can't remember what the magazine was. It said that Lucasfilm was redoing the special effects and some of the model designs or whatever. I panicked because I thought they were going to change the entire look of the movies.
Sure.
And I said, next one's the next one. You can't change the next one. And, where you do the lightsabers and everything else. But so I was, I remember seeing that preview as well. I even remember what the movie was and being very, very excited. But for me, and what do y'all think about this, is that I remember at a time in the mid-'90s, before there was even whispers of the special editions, sitting back at movies like Jurassic Park and putting aside story issues with some of these and Independence Day and wondering if Star Wars had come out in the 90s, early 90s, what it would have looked like and what George Lucas could have achieved with the technology that they used to animate the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park or the alien ships in Independence Day, what that would have meant for something like, say, the Rancor or the Dewbacks, and what it would have meant for the first battle of the Death Star, and then the second battle of the Death Star in Return of the Jedi. Was that ever something? Were you disappointed with how that turned out, or did you? Did that fuel your anticipation, or what was your thoughts regard to the differences in technology?
Surprisingly, with the special edition, that's probably the thing I if I have to find something that I wish were a bit different, I talk about that more than I do the prequels because I like both of them very much. But when I first saw it, I remember thinking, wow, they're adding new scenes, and I just saw different stuff with the X-wings and the Death Star battle, and I thought, oh wow, they're gonna touch up the special effects on that, and that actually ironically didn't bother me. I thought it was gorgeous, and when they showed the close-up of the X-wing coming in and they're kind of looking into Luke's cockpit a little bit, and you see R2, I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is really, really cool. And then I saw Jabba. And the first time I saw it, I was just, just in this enraptured space and seeing Star Wars in a crowded theater with my brother and my friends and my family, and everyone was cheering and laughing at the right moments. I just remember thinking, this is amazing, this is amazing. It wasn't until after I reflected on it and watched it at home that I noticed how some of the special effects, while most of it was enhanced, some of it just shouldn't have been adhered to or changed. The Jabba scene, the way he looked for the very first version of A New Hope, and when Harrison Ford steps on Jabba's tail, I remember thinking, why is that in there? So it's sort of an anachronism to try to go back and see how you may have felt. But I will say, as far as the things that could have been changed and were changed for the better, like the Falcon leaving Mos Eisley and the X-Wings, I thought, this is a home run. I have no problem with this being changed at all. It's the dialogue where I get crazy.
Yeah, the other thing too about special editions and updates and things like that, it's technology, but then, like you mentioned, Dennis, what would it be like to had made that movie in '90s era? You mentioned Jurassic Park, Independence Day. I remember going to Jurassic Park and Independence Day both, and the quality of the special effects were just off, blew the ceiling off the roof because it was so well done. You're just so engrossed in the movie. You're just right in there with those dinosaurs, and the aliens are invading, coming through the clouds over the cities, and it's so much believability. But if you look back at Star Wars, my kids still watch it, and it's still believable. I mean, I think it wasn't so much of, what can we do with today? I think it would still be, similar to what it was in the 70s than it would be in the 90s. I think that would stay true. I think special effects would be there, but I don't think it would be so, pushed in your face so much as it was, maybe us thinking it would be. But I think special effects are there to put you deeper into the movie. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. Dan, you mentioned the Jabba scene, which to me, I agree, it does not work.
It's better now.
It's better now, and it's interesting.
It still doesn't need to be in there. You don't need to be reintroduced to the whole plot point of why Greedo being shot.
Right.
And blah blah blah. It's just the exact same conversation retold. That's not stellar storytelling.
I agree, and I think that sometimes it's almost like I
better switch to decaf.
It's almost like why change those things? Are we trying to tell a better story, or just kind of show off our flex our muscle with the special effects a little bit? It's a little of both. I think we don't. I think we still love it. Like you mentioned, Dan, it wasn't that overtly to change our minds about the whole films themselves, and really we have a love loss feeling about it. But I'd be interested to see how they do things in the upcoming movie. How they kind of balance that too, and then we'll get to the prequels as well, and how they balance that. So it's interesting to see that, because we're going to see that coming in a few months here.
And it'll be from a 2015 lens. And for what it's worth, when I do watch Star Wars, I do watch the Blu-ray version. I don't go back. I mean,
the Blu-ray.
Yeah, I have I have a bunch of the DVD versions. I have the original, the pan and scan version on the DVD, but I don't pop it in. I still watch the modern version of it. So, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I'll just offer one quick note before we move on to the prequels, but I have a very hard time being objective when it comes to the re-release, the special edition in '97, because as I mentioned last time I was on your show, that was the night I got engaged the first time.
Wow.
So,
that's right.
Yeah, it was a complete accident. Just had a ring that was ready before it was supposed to be, and I had nowhere to hide it, so went ahead and proposed that evening. And so it was just, so I was euphoric to begin with. My only comment on the Jabba scene, well, I guess I have two, is one, I too didn't like the stepping on the tail. I know they had to do something if they wanted to include that scene simply because Han walked behind the actor. And then I kind of felt that regardless of how you wanted to slice it, it kind of made an enhanced problems to the story with why Han might or might not have shot first. If he wasn't afraid to march into the docking bay where Jabba and his goons were, then why would he have been so threatened by Greedo? In the first, if you want to say Han shot first, that he had to shoot him if Greedo was just going to march him off to see Jabba. So anyway, put that thought aside, and we'll move on to the prequels. Now we're getting into a period of time where we don't have Twitter, we don't have Facebook, but we do have a fairly rampant online community, and there are the potential spoilers abounding. Do you all recall what it was, what you first learned about the movie, and just kind of what your attitude was about learning about the movie before you had a chance to see it in theaters?
Yeah, I've got a memory that I probably haven't told Dan yet, so This is exclusive.
Wow.
I remember the prequels came out and being very excited. Obviously, the announcement was big, and I remember, like you said, the introduction to the internet was big. A lot of people jumping online. I didn't read. I wasn't as keen to spoilers. I did collect like Wizard magazine had some stuff.
Yeah.
And great magazine. I missed that magazine. They had obviously some newsstand stuff, magazines and stuff, and like I said, the Scholastic stuff was out too. But the memory that I always go back to, and it's the craziest memory, I remember getting home from school early, maybe the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock hour, and the Rosie O'Donnell show was on. Huh. And I don't know, for some reason I was watching it, and she had seen the movie previously to its release, and she was talking about it, and she was talking how scary Darth Maul was. And she was like, oh, I'm freaked out, he's freaky, he's scary. And I was thinking, I thought to myself, is this going to be like some, I didn't know what to expect. You know, I was like, oh, is this going to be something that's going to be a little scary? I mean, I didn't expect Star Wars to be scary. You know, it's a kind of a family fun adventure space odyssey type thing. And this is something that we've never seen before. This is a brand new storyline. We don't know what's going on. We don't know who's a who. I remember when the trailer came out as well, when I remember Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn fighting Darth Maul, and that's that quick scene where he kind of slashes back and you see his face at just a brief of second. Oh, yeah. And he looks very menacing and very scary. And I kept thinking right in my mind, like, who is this guy? And what, there's 2 Jedi and who, I just, it was so hard. And then the biggest thing for me too was Ian McGregor playing Obi-Wan Kenobi. I just had to like encapsulate that into my mind, a younger version of Obi-Wan, and I was like, does this start with Obi-Wan? How does this go? You know, is this his training period? And I just hadn't wrapped my mind around this Anakin story. You know, I hadn't thought about that. I've always thought it as Luke's story, and I think the prequels really brought that together for me, especially with the Episode 1 and Rosie O'Donnell. So, good times.
That's cool. I don't think you have shared that before. The thing with the Phantom Menace for me, I remember always believing that there was going to be something. If you picked up Starlog or Wizard or any sort of entertainment magazine or any sort of pop culture fanzine or whatever, what have you, they would talk about the idea that Lucas would play around with the idea of revisiting and making prequel films. So you always sort of knew it was going to happen. You always sort of hoped that it would happen, but there was nothing concrete, and life goes on, and there was very much the dark times when it came to Star Wars, and you grow up and become a teenager, and suddenly you're starting thinking more about girls instead of Star Wars and things like that, so you sort of forget. And then they had a big deal about the Star Wars movies are coming out again on VHS. See them again for the last time, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they had an interview with Leonard Maltin in the beginning of all 3 of the films where we would talk to George. And George started to mention, hey, I'm working on the prequels. It's going to be about Anakin Skywalker when he becomes Darth Vader. And the mind reeled, and you bought those. I was going to buy the videotapes anyway, but I knew that he was going to reveal some interesting things, so I got them. We were so excited, and I was subscribing to Star Wars Insider, and they had, like, they would give first little previews of images of things from the Phantom Menace. So that was how you got your news. Like you mentioned, Corey, the internet was big. And that was when Rebel Scum and the Force.net were huge. I mean, they're obviously huge now. They're one of the biggest websites in fandom, period. But they were huge into spoilers, and they had a lot of interesting things on there. USA Today, ironically, I don't know why it's ironic. It's actually not ironic at all. They, in their life section of their newspaper, they always gave, like, it was a countdown to the Phantom Menace. They'd always give, like, a paragraph or 2, and sometimes an image of facts about the Phantom Menace or facts about the Star Wars franchise in general. So naturally, guys, I subscribed to USA Today just so I would never miss a single one. And I cut out every single one. I have them in a box in the attic upstairs. And it was just so exciting. And I remember seeing on Entertainment Tonight, that was the first time I saw the trailer for the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I remember that too.
And I think... And I taped it. Arguably,
I think I did too.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure Dennis too. It was the greatest trailer ever.
Yeah.
I mean that trailer was just incredible. And you saw Darth Maul for the first time, and it blew me away. What about you, Dennis?
Well, the first time I saw the trailer, I was at my first house, and I had a 56K dial-up modem, and I can't remember exactly where online they had put the trailer. And I started downloading it, but so did everybody else in the world. And yeah. I think I started at 5 p.m. one day, and by the time I went to bed that night, I think it was probably a 10th or the 8th of the way done downloading the thing. But kind of forgot about it, went to work the next day, came home, was having dinner, and from my dining room, all of a sudden I could hear something start in my office, and it was that trailer. And so I ran in there real quick and watched it over and over and over again. And I was afraid that if I ever closed that window, I was never going to get that back. And I remember being super, super excited and pumped. The scene, it's from the opening of the movie where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are on the Trade Federation battleship, and they're attacking droids as they're trying to make their way to the bridge. That just caused my imagination to run wild. You know, here we were seeing Jedi really in their prime, doing their thing, attacking, and I love the fight scenes in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and I've watched them hundreds of times. But I remember having heard somewhere along the line that we were going to get to see Jedi in their prime, and I had been super excited for that. And there it was. And so I was pumped. Having said that, and seen the preview, did the movie live up to your all's expectations?
You know, Darth Maul was scary. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, Dan, you mentioned also, Dennis, that it has this grandiose feel to it. And I remember sitting in theaters watching it, and it did. It was larger than life. The landscapes were huge. I remember seeing those sprawling Naboo landscapes and the makeup and the costuming. It was so well done, and the pod race scenes were so much fun. Just experiencing those, and in light of all the backlash it kind of had, after that, and the folks, I didn't really have that, coming out of the theater. I remember coming out of the theater going, that was just fun. It was a lot of great fun. And I just, maybe I didn't compare it to other movies. It was just something different to me because it was, like, again, we talked about, it was different special effects, different characters we hadn't really been introduced to, and a whole different era of Star Wars that everything was so shiny and clean, and it wasn't the old beat-up Star Wars that I knew. So it still had those elements, but also I still got excited and had fun to live back in that world, and I think I still enjoyed it enough to obviously see other films, but it's something I look back at and I think a lot of times, like, am I just falling into the pitfalls of the prequel people who just don't like those films? I would say no. I've come around to the fact that this is all one story, and as I grow older, I enjoy my kids and enjoy those films more so, I think, than the older films. So I mean, for me, did it live up to my anticipation? I think it did, because it was such a good film in itself. I think George kind of had brought us back into that world and told a great story.
Wow, I'm glad to hear you say that. It would have been interesting to see if we had Coffee with Kenobi back then when that came on, because, again, the anticipation hype for that was just through the roof for me. I went and got the figures early, just like Force Friday is going to be here in a few weeks.
Yeah, next week.
And I was just so fired up about it, just beyond belief, which we could do a whole coffee chat on just that. There was just that anticipation
hype, yeah,
for the Phantom Menace and how we all felt. But for me, when I walked out of the theater, I remember seeing Star Wars and seeing the logo and just being so happy, just beyond happy, and just constantly mentally pinching myself thinking, wow, here we are. And then they introduced the Jedi and TC-14, and then they landed on Naboo, and Jar Jar showed up, who never bothered me, by the way. And they were halfway through the stuff with Luto Gunga and the different monsters attacking them in the sub. And I remember thinking, something's not right here. And then I got to know Qui-Gon Jinn quite a bit more, and I loved him. I absolutely loved him. I liked that Darth Maul was sparsely in it because I think that's more powerful. I was surprised because he was such a larger-than-life figure on the poster, the main poster for the Phantom Menace. Mm-hmm. Then when it was over, I left the theater, and the person I was with looked at me and said, "So did you like it? What'd you think?" And I remember sitting in the chair and kind of slunching down and looking out the window going, I don't think I liked it. And I was so sad and so depressed. I think I stayed up till like 3 or 4 in the morning thinking about it. Then I woke up the next day. I took the next day off of work, of course, because I knew I was going to go back and see it again. I saw it 3 times opening week, and I saw it 9 times overall in his first run. So I obviously loved it. I love the Phantom Menace quite a bit, actually. And I was a little bummed, but then I just told myself, okay, I remember thinking the thing that bugged me the most was there's no Han Solo character. I didn't want Han Solo in there. I didn't want him in there at all, but I wanted that that levity, that humor, that we're not taking ourselves so seriously, every man kind of thing. There really isn't a character like that in The Phantom Menace, and you could probably say there isn't really a character like that in the prequels, period. So it's more challenging, especially when you know the original film so incredibly well. Mm-hmm. But I eventually and I remember having serious debates with my friends. It was kind of funny, like, you can criticize your family, but if your friends do, forget it, because blood is thicker than water, right? Yeah. So I even though I had issues with some things in The Phantom Menace, when my friends started to knock it and make pejorative comments, boy, did my feathers get ruffled, and I thought, no way, it's a great movie, and I started defending it, and I started to believe it, and here we are, and I do love Phantom Menace.
I had bought tickets for the opening day, and that was 2 weeks in advance. And then my wife and I had a friend who worked for Pizza Hut, and all the various PepsiCo companies were getting an advanced screening. So I got to see it a week in advance of its general release. And so I was super excited for that. The tickets were really cool. We didn't get to keep them, but they were the movie poster. They were gorgeous. They were huge. And I walked into the theater and saw the movie, and I really enjoyed it. Really had a good time. However, the crowd that was there was not necessarily Star Wars fans. I think they all liked Star Wars, but they weren't fans like you and I are fans. And so I think the reaction was a bit more tepid. And I had a whole lot more fun the second time I went and saw it on opening day with people that were anxious to see a Star Wars movie. And so I had a good time. I will say I was a little thrown. I didn't think that I really got the idea that it was going to be at times as Anakin-centric as it could have been, especially once they got to Tatooine. And the pod race, as cool as it was, I thought was a bit long. But I do remember I don't think I was disappointed. I think I really had been excited for it for a long time and was glad to finally see it. So having been through the history of the Star Wars up to this point, I guess one last question before we get into the next, the sequel trilogy coming up. Did any of you, or either of you, I should say, read any of the novelizations before you? I guess, Stan, you said you may have read one of them before The New Hope, but did you read any of the books before you saw the movies?
No, New Hope I didn't read till well after the fact. I read the first couple chapters of Empire.
That's right.
And then for Jedi, I read all the way to Yoda dying, and I put the book down. I remember this was one of those like mountaintop moments. So I put the book down after Yoda died, and I said to my brother, "Yoda died," which he still has not let me live down. And it's been 30 plus years since that happened. And I remember thinking, why am I reading this? Why don't I just wait and go see the movie and experience it that way? So from that moment on, I have read all the novels of all 6 films, but I didn't read the prequels until well after I saw the films.
No, I haven't read any of the novels before the movies, and I haven't read any of the prequel novels themselves. I want to revisit the
Revenge of the
original
Sith you
novels.
would love.
Yeah, I want to go back and read them because it's just told in a different atmosphere. But it's so ingrained in my memory as the film version. The novelization version obviously is built off the screenplay, but I've read film counterparts in book novelizations before, and they've been almost better than the film sometimes. So it's interesting to go back and revisit.
What about you, Dennis?
No, I didn't read any of them really in advance. Before Return of the Jedi, I had gone through I had read just enough of that picture book from Scholastic to figure out that wasn't Luke, that was in the Emperor's Throne. And I was relieved and put it down and waited for the movie to see that. I do have a tip for you, though. If you ever have to take a long car drive, grab a copy of the novelization for any one of those movies, and whoever's driving, read it. My wife and I did that after episode 1 on a long 20-hour plus drive from Philadelphia to Dallas, and it passed the time really quickly.
That's cool.
That's a really fun way to pass time on the trip. So we now have the sequel trilogy coming up, and we've discussed kind of what we were expecting in our experience with all the movies that preceded it. What are your all's thoughts? Are you more excited, or are you just as excited? Or are you apprehensive, or what do you think about with movies coming up?
We mentioned too as those movies kind of came up in hype, you can see it building, like you guys mentioned back in the 70s, where the secondary films were coming out, Empire and Return of the Jedi, and you just got this little hype of friends talking, or people are talking, newscasters are talking, because it's a big thing, and as we move into the internet era, it's something that's moving into our daily dose of interactions. And then today, it's at the touch of our fingers. We can jump on Twitter and Facebook and see something almost daily, somebody talking or making conversation about Star Wars and the films. And for me, honestly, it's a little overwhelming because obviously we have the podcast and we keep up to date on some things and, try to keep as much spoilers away as we can. And sometimes it's difficult. Last week there were some things that came out that I even texted Dan. I said, hey, beware, there's stuff out there that I happened to page through or scroll through without even knowing that what it was. And it's, you see that flash of an image and your mind starts going, wait, what would I just see? And it's just folks that are just looking to kind of glob on and find out what they can about the film, because it's such a big thing in our lives and as fans and followers of the franchise. And again, Dan, we were hunting down the Entertainment Weekly edition came out, and we went to 10 stores. I went to 6 stores, and you finally got a one. You texted me, said, hey, I got one. I'll come drop it off. We did a quick little selfie photo. It was a lot of fun. But I've been paging through it the last couple of days here in this past weekend, just looking at it, the imagery up close, letting my kids look at it, reading the captions on the pages, just kind of the dialogue between the director and the interviewer and the article with J.J. Abrams and stuff. And I read it, and I just, my mind starts to, what if this happens? Or who this person is or that person? And it's still a lot of mystery to it. I mean, we don't know a whole lot. We only know the new characters and some of the old characters coming back, and we know bits and pieces about things. And I texted Dan this the other day, this feels like the Phantom Menace to me a little bit. It's coming again. You can feel it. There's this rush of emotion that's it's unexplainable, really. And for the biggest part of it for me was sitting in Anaheim, and seeing that trailer in that darkened room, and you just get and me chills. And yep, we were all sitting there, and it's just like, you hear that scene from our Han and Chewie that were home scene, and that's just gonna be so iconic. It's gonna be one of those scenes. It's gonna be up there. It's gonna live with you forever. Just because you knew exactly where you were. We just talked about all this stuff. You knew exactly what you're doing and who you're with. And, it just built that memory, because not even you have to be a Star Wars fan. It's one of those things that just almost unexplainable. And as we move into this new film and this new era of the sequel trilogy, it gets more and more intense, trying to kind of weed through the internet's sea and find what you can and try to just stay away from what you don't want to spoil for yourself.
For me, it's not the Phantom Menace for me, because I'm different. I'm older. I've been through anticipation hype before. The Phantom Menace, I was as excited as you could possibly be and not be checked into a psych ward. And I don't want to do that again to myself. That's going to be hard to do, because, we're very fortunate and blessed. The Star Wars community is even bigger and more welcoming, and we're happy to be a part of that. And having this show and going to Celebration and getting to know people like Dennis. And Dennis and I, we're friends. But I don't know, Dennis, if I would have met you without Star Wars. So it's just kind of amazing how it's brought a lot of people together in myriad ways. And it's great. So to me, The Force Awakens, it's going to come and go. And I'm going to miss this hype. I'm going to miss this anticipation, because it's probably my favorite part about it, because we've had 3 years to look forward to this. I just can't wait to see the film. I just assume it's going to be wonderful, and maybe it's not. I don't know, but I'm just going to try to curb my enthusiasm, as Larry David would say, because I just want to enjoy it. I just want to enjoy the experience, sitting in the theater, see Star Wars on the screen a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Episode 7, The Force Awakens. I just want to see that and just enjoy it. Living through the Phantom Menace was the best thing that could have happened, because it helped me to learn how to be excited but not to be anxious, and just kind of take it in stride. There's going to be things that I'm not going to love. There's going to be things that I think are just beyond wonderful. So it's going to be a great exercise in just enjoying what you love and putting things in perspective, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Now, I didn't have the pleasure of being at Celebration, but I do remember closing the door to my office at work and watching that trailer. And just when I heard that iconic line that Corey was talking about, Chewie, we're home, I just started giggling like a madman. And
man.
I watched it over and over and over again, and brought my partner into the office and showed it to him and anyone else that I could that would tolerate me to do so. And as you mentioned, it's been a great opportunity to make friends. I'm looking forward to going to Rancho Obi-Wan in October and for their big gala event and meeting people from the community there that I've never had the chance to.
Great, man! That's cool. I really wish we could be a part of that.
Yeah, but I know some people from across the community will be there, and I'm super excited for that.
Good deal. Well, Dennis, thank you again, not only for supporting our show, but just for being who you are. And you're such a positive light in Star Wars fandom on Twitter, on Facebook, and just interacting with you. So we're very fortunate that we have gotten to know you and you're a part of the Coffee with Kenobi family. Thank you so much for winning this, because this is a great discussion.
This was fun.
One of the things that, I don't know if we've talked about this in the air or not before, but when Corey and I are taping a show, we text each other because we're not, even though we live in the same town, we're not sitting next to each other while we were recording. So it's kind of like our way to sort of keep each other on track. And, hey, you want to ask this question? What do you think about that? And this time we hardly even did that. We just said, boy, this is awesome. This is fun. And that's a tribute to you, Dennis, for leading the way. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for the opportunity. I've had a great time.
As have we. We hope to have you on again. We certainly will. You were awesome for Rebels Reaction Season 1, so we've got 22 episodes of Season 2 to talk about. Where can people reach out to you if they want to ask you a question or just say hello?
The best place to find me is on Twitter at DJKVER2. And please, if you get a chance, check out my comic reviews on RetroZap.com.
And you're on Topps Trader Card app, aren't you?
I'm sorry, what's that?
The Topps Trading Card?
Oh, yes. Same handle, DJKVER2. And I do love to trade, so please look me up.
He does. If it wasn't for Dennis, I wouldn't have half the cards I have.
Yes, Dennis is very nice about trading.
He's great. And he gives you fair trades, and he's awesome. So thank you again, Dennis. And for listeners, if you'd like to have a coffee chat here on Coffee with Kenobi, go to our Patreon page and check out the link and put your name in the hat to be a part of this coffee chat experience. Thank you again, Dennis, and everybody have a great night.
Chewie, get us out of here!
If you would like to respond to our question of the show, have a comment, or just want to say hello, send us an email or MP3 at feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com. Or if you have a specific question or comment for either of us individually, email us at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com or CoreyC@coffeewithkenobi.com, or visit us at coffeewithkenobi.com and click on the Contact Us section, or comment on one of the stories featured on the site. If you enjoy the show, please write a review in iTunes or Stitcher. You can also like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, as well as keep up to date at our Twitter feed at coffeewithkenobi. You can also find us on Tumblr at coffeewithkenobi.tumblr.com. If you enjoy the jazz music, the album is Eye to Eye by Steve Torak.
Give the evacuation code signal.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.
From Topps comes the all-new digital card collecting app, free to download from iTunes or Google Play. Star Wars Card Trader.
For the first time ever, collect and trade everything from legendary 1977 Star Wars cards to new cards featuring exclusive content from Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
All from the comfort of your mobile devices. Star Wars Card Trader.
These are the cards you're looking for.